for most MSP owners, they kind of, they're mostly technologists, and becomes a matter of changing from technologist to leader, and recruiter and builder of teams and strategist and and all of those things, because you can't scale without that stuff, right? Without actually letting go of a lot of the things that most MSP owners want to hold on to, and building a really capable, strong team to handle most of the day-to-day stuff, and kind of get out of the way.
Love to hear, starting off a little bit about your journey. I know you had an MSP, you built that up, and now
Mhm.
you're helping other MSPs. Tell us a little bit about your journey before you started your current coaching practice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I actually started in the industry before there were really managed services. There were a few people doing it, but before it became mainstream. So I started in a very small, just kind of consultancy with one other guy. When and built that, kind of under the umbrella of a family office down here in Texas. So kind of like learned the business, transitioned from break fix to managed services in there probably around 2006 or 2007, and built that business for somebody else. um and probably around 2015, 2016, I was like, hey, I'm doing this for somebody else who already has plenty of money, so why don't I go and, I kind of feel like I cracked the code of, hey, what does it take to build a successful MSP. And so I said, hey, let's go do this on my own. And I did have a financial partner when I went into business together with him. But yeah, bought a small MSP, about 5 people, and then and then a couple of years later, bought another MSP, integrated the two of those when we were in kind of the banking and credit union space.
Hmm.
So most of our clients were all community banks, mostly in Texas, but kind of also in surrounding states, and then credit unions kind of throughout the country. So yeah, so then I planned to run that for probably another 5 to 10 years, but as as whatever fate or the universe or God or whatever would have it, we ended up selling in 2020, late 2021, so just over a little over a couple of years ago. And yeah, and then I worked for the buyer for a little over a year, and then after that, just about a year ago, kind of struck off on my own, and now I'm coaching MSPs, and mainly work one-on-one with MSP owners, but also do kind of some business operating system implementation as well. And so yeah, so that's kind of the story, if you will.
Nice. Are you
Yeah.
comfortable sharing with us, what are the revenue bands and size of the company on that journey? Like,
Yeah, and so we started kind of with 5. We added another about 12 with our second acquisition, and then and actually didn't grow that much people wise, but had a very I would consider high revenue to people, for an MSP, as we grew. So very high margin, high profitability. And in rough numbers, let's just say, you know, got it to around the $5 million mark, and then sold about that. And I planned to kind of to get it to more of the 20 to 30 million mark, and things happen. So but then yeah, I mean, and then after that, I was running a $15 million business unit of the company that I sold to, and still a shareholder in that company as well.
one thing we see is with any business, MSP or any business, that journey can look very different at those different stages, and what you
Yeah.
have to do running a company and being a leader at each of those stages can change dramatically. And that's one thing we've seen people have trouble with, is making that shift, right? From it's me, and then it's 5 people, and now suddenly it's 10, 12. Revenues
Yeah.
are growing. Like, how do I have to change as a leader? And how
Yeah.
does the company have to run differently for us to succeed at this level and or get to that next level?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it becomes Yeah, it becomes for most MSP owners, they kind of they're mostly technologists, and it becomes a matter of changing from technologist to leader and recruiter and builder of teams and strategist and and all of those things, because you can't scale without that stuff, right? Without actually letting go of a lot of the things that most MSP owners want to hold on to, and building a really capable, strong team to handle most of the day-to-day stuff, and kind of get out of the way in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it completely resonates. Definitely something we hear out there a lot. Is there, in your coaching, in your business, I guess tell us a little bit about your current business.
Yeah, absolutely. So I spend most of my time one-on-one with MSP owners. We usually meet a couple of times a month, and we're what's I think different between what I do and what a lot of other people do in the industry is it's not like a program. I'm not saying, hey, I'm gonna go do this homework and then come back and we'll talk about it and all of that. I'm meeting them where they're at, right? So I work with very small MSPs, all the way up to, over 100 million in revenue. And so everybody's at a different place in their journey. And what we work on is, what's most important for you right now? What are the things that are holding you back? Where are you stuck? And how do we get you unstuck? And then how do we take a strategic view of what you're doing, and who you are as a leader, and what do you need to be and who do you need to be as a leader to get you where you want to go? And a lot of times they don't know actually exactly where they want to go, right? So we go through a process of helping them figure that out, and then do the things that it takes to get there, to get them on that path. So I think of it in as far as like when I start an engagement with somebody, we're dealing with the things that are kind of like the most urgent, or the hardest challenges to them right now. And then we kind of go through, generally speaking, some process of working on vision and purpose. Why does this company exist? What are we trying to accomplish? Big picture, how does that fit in with my personal goals, my personal wealth goals, my financial targets as an individual, as the owner? Getting the vision piece, and then we work down into strategy. So if we know where we're going, how are we going to get there? And then the execution on a day in, day out basis, right? So it kind of follows somewhat of a business operating system path, and some clients are ready to jump into kind of an implementation of that, but many I just work with one-on-one in that stuff, and they kind of lead the implementation of that piece themselves. So yeah, I hope that kind of answers the question you were asking there.
Completely, very much fits with our philosophy and our approach. If you get clarity on your vision, which is much easier to do when you get kind of the big challenges out of your head first,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
get those down, put those over here, and now think about what are our outcomes, and
Mm-hmm.
then come back and let's look at the challenges we have, let's look at the vision we have, and reverse engineer how
Mm-hmm.
to get from here to there,
Yeah.
and look at what our biggest goals are. Do you find that there are different challenges that can hold a leader or CEO back at each stage
Mm-hmm.
of, if we look at kind of those bands, because you kind of cross the whole spectrum with your coaching, right? You've got folks that are early stage, you've got
Mm-hmm.
folks 100 million. We think about kind of that journey from 1 to 10, 10 to 50, 50 to 100. Do you see sort of different challenges or things that hold them back, or does it tend to be some variant of the same thing?
Yeah. Well, and I'll say, like, in all frankness, I mean, most of my clients are on the very, on the smaller end of that side, or on of that band. But yeah, challenges. I mean, I think in growth, it's you generally so I'll go with like the if you start kind of on the smaller end, think about a $1 to $2 million shop. Often the owner can kind of like push through to that point by kind of doing everything themselves, right? They're like, yeah, I'm the guy. Everything kind of runs through me. I do all the sales. I manage all the people, all the the clients. Whenever they have a problem, they call me. And there's a big challenge there in breaking out of that. As far as like, hey, I'm used to being the traffic cop for the entire business, but then at some point they realize, oh, I'm never going to have a life if I don't if I don't make some serious changes, right? So I've got to learn how to find the right people and to delegate to, and learn how to delegate, because they usually stink at delegating. They're just like, hey, you go do this thing, instead of helping people understand how and why, and all of the details behind that. And a lot of times, if they delegate something, they delegate a responsibility without delegating authority. That's that's a whole other issue. So anyways, yeah. So you run into issues there. And that's a place to kind of get over the hump. And then you run into another kind of band where it's like, oh, I've got to, not only do I need to delegate, I actually have to have I have to have leaders who can lead other people. And then at the next level, right, I have to have leaders that can lead leaders in building another layer of leadership inside the organization. The next piece I'm thinking about is where, in order to really scale, they're used to principal-led selling for the most part. Of course, many people try to hire salespeople much too early, but in order to really scale, and when you get larger, you have to have a higher amount of growth to combat kind of the attrition that naturally comes. And so you got to learn to build sales teams. You got to learn to build sales culture, sales leadership, all of that, in order to actually continue scaling on past the 10, 15, $20 million mark. You're not going to be able to do that on your own as an owner, right? So those are a few things that come to mind just as when you ask that question.
What are some of the ways that you find are helpful for CEOs to think about things in order to make those shifts and address those three areas? Are there specific things you found that are, particularly helpful? Does it vary from individual to individual?
Yeah, I do. I think it does vary. I always go back to a few things for me that kind of had this impact of like, oh, I'm kind of going from not really sure how to scale this thing to, okay, I really know my next steps and how to get where I want to get. And this was during the first company that I built, was, yes. So the three things were joining a peer group, so a group of other MSPs doing the same thing, in accountability together. That was a huge step for just for understanding some of the keys to scaling. The second thing was implementing a business operating system. Right at the time, for me, that was EOS. There's a lot of them out there. But that was a huge key. And then the third was getting a coach. Like so the combination of those three things, and a coach separate from consultant or implementer or something like that. That the one-on-one executive coaching made just a huge night and day difference for me, not only as a leader and as somebody running an MSP, but also in my personal life as well, because it's a holistic, I mean, you're a whole person. You're not just a CEO or just an owner, right? So yeah, and those obviously it depends on the size and all of that, of how those different things affect you and your growth as an owner. But those three things are always, I just always go back to those in my mind when somebody asks that type of question. So
yeah, those are great distinctions too. For those that don't know, an implementer with a system like the entrepreneurial operating system, they're a business coach. So they provide coaching to the entire leadership team in a particular business operating system. And here's the steps you go through to install that in your company over a period of a couple of years. What you're talking about is really one-on-one coaching for the person to develop as a leader, make sure they have the clarity they need to be successful
Mhm.
at home, at work, because
Yeah.
the more complete you are as a whole person, the better you're going to perform as a leader, as a
Yes.
CEO, and
Yes.
scaling your business.
100%.
So makes total sense, right? They're two very
100%.
different things.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And there's a lot of people in the industry that call themselves coaches, which, you can kind of debate semantics of what is coaching versus consulting versus I've got a program to take you through and all of that. But yeah, but what we're talking about there is really that one-on-one where we're working on your personal growth, your growth as a leader. How effective are you at what you do? Are you doing the right things that or to to get you where you say that you want to go?
Mm-hmm.
Holding up a mirror to kind of say, hey, you said that you wanted this, but you're doing this instead. So what's the disconnect there, and how do we address that? Or do you even want to address that? Or are the things that you said you wanted actually the things that you want, right? So yeah, there's definitely some distinctions there that make it very different.
It makes total sense. When it comes to improving operations and getting a CEO, leader of an MSP, out of that kind of hair on fire mode that we can all fall into as we're building kind of the early stage of business, where we're
Mhm.
everything from chief dishwasher to trash man to sales
Yeah.
lead and everything else. What are some of the systems you like to use to help them do that? Are you a fan of EOS? Are you a fan of, do you have your own variants? What are the business operating systems you've seen out there be particularly useful?
Yeah, so there are many out there, and a lot of them come from kind of similar places, right? I mean, from Vern
Just
Harnish or
about all of them. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, concepts from Jim Collins, Lencioni, Carnegie. Obviously all of these different concepts that have been around for a long, long time. So I'm particularly partial to a system that's been created specifically for MSP owners, and it's through a company called MSP Plus OS, which used to be called ConnectStrat, and we take so we kind of have our own system, our own set of tools, and take a lot from all of those different things and add in a specific spin for particularly for MSPs that seems to resonate well for them. We're all former MSP owners, and so it was kind of created with that in mind, and it's running. We kind of started at the roughly $2 million range, and I think the largest one running it is about 450 FTEs at this point. So it's it can take you a long way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, yeah, particularly partial towards that. And there's a few key differences. We definitely dive more into strategy, which some might say there's a little bit of strategy missing from some of the other operating systems, as well as a different cadence that seems to help. Excuse me. That seems to help owners stay a little bit more focused, kind of
What
in
type of
throughout.
cadence? I'm curious. Like, what do the cadences look like? Are you doing
Yeah.
weekly, monthly, quarterly kind of things?
Yeah. So there's quarterlies, and then there's kind of a like a 6 week check-in as well. So we tend to keep the quarterlies slightly shorter, than shorter than a day, because a lot of times in the afternoons people are already fading anyways, and so we repurpose some of that time to kind of a 6 week check-in where we do more like we call it team and tools day, where it's like, hey, well, let's brush up on how's the team doing, where are we at with our culture, accountability chart, et cetera. And then like, hey, we can take that time to also teach a new tool that can really help provide clarity and in some spaces that are that there's some spaces where some operating systems don't cover certain things that we found very helpful as well. So yeah, and then we start off, instead of we start off with an owner's day, like in as opposed to kind of bringing the whole leadership team in from the beginning. The owners have a lot of times just different opinion on how they want things to go, And so we found it really helpful to have a kind of a half day with just the owners saying, okay, what do you want this to look like? Who should actually be in the room? And what does that look like? Starting with some culture stuff. And as far as like, are the people that you think should be in the room really good fit to be in the room based on the culture, and all of that. And so we kind of start a little bit different, and then we have a little bit different kind of cadence, and we also throw in some kind of one-on-one in coaching as part of that too with the owner, because that could be really helpful just to keep them on track if they're, whatever, having trouble with their, with their weekly meetings or cadence, or, holding people accountable and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Because I think what people miss about these operating systems is the operating system metaphor, and every MSP will know this, right? But what an operating system does, it's just the rules for how the hardware talks to
Yeah.
one another and how you run software on top of it.
Yeah.
But the application, in this case, the business, is going to be unique. It's going to have its own set of challenges. And while the operating system can help you get the challenges out, and in most of them do a decent job of getting your vision out there, what are we going to do strategically? You start to get into much more nuanced questions and much more nuanced ways of thinking about things. It sounds like you're coming in, really helping companies get into those nuanced decisions and understand how to think about strategy, how that can inform things. I also really like the 6-week cycle. We have been advocates of that for a long time.
Really? Okay.
90 days in some business arenas, is good, but that's really to some degree a relic from an older planning, execution, review cycle.
Right.
And while we still need to have our quarterly financials and
Yep.
still need to do certain things quarterly, that 6 weeks of sprinting, and getting into like, okay, we're going to focus and what are we going to knock out over this 6-week time frame? It may take us a little longer than a month, but we don't have 3 months to wait. Like, let's get moving. So it pushes people forward.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it gives you get twice as many learning cycles. Whereas if you're just doing quarterly goal setting, whether it's rocks or objectives and key results, you're getting 4 learning cycles per year if you're running it right, which people often aren't. By right, I mean, you need to adapt and adjust quarter to quarter.
Exactly.
Whereas the more frequent cadence, your learning velocity goes up, you're going to adapt and evolve more quickly. And what we've seen is whatever business operating system you're using, you're going to install it much more quickly, right? The load time, using the business operating system metaphor, right? You remember the old days of 2 disks, 2 big floppies you had to put in to load things, right? And it feels sometimes like some of the roadmaps for these systems, while change is hard, 2 years to load and really get everything moving it can be tough to see the value for people. It can be tough to get the buy-in at all the way down the organization if you don't have a little more urgency.
Right.
Not hair on fire urgency, but just that quicker cadence.
Yeah. Makes total sense. Yeah. And that's why we just do it a little bit differently, but yeah, I totally resonate with that. And even, that 6-week kind of, a month is maybe not quite long enough. 3 months is too long. So, hey, let's plop it right there in the middle. And it tends to work really, really well.
Yeah, I really like that. So keeping everyone aligned and focused on the right things, is that done just through that 6-week cadence? Is there a weekly or daily cadence that you mix in as well?
Oh, yeah. And probably what a lot of people are used to, a 60 or 90-minute kind of weekly meeting with a set agenda, same time, same people, all of that kind of stuff, making sure that you've got, you're reviewing your quarterly objectives every time, your scorecard, your to-dos, and then kind of a process of going through and, looking at issues and solving those, as as time allows in those times as well. So yeah, I mean, probably something like a lot of people would be used to for a weekly meeting cadence with the leadership team, and then other meetings where necessary, like departmental, that kind of a thing, all depending on how large the company is. But it's I kind of operate from the idea that everybody in the organization should be in some kind of weekly meeting cadence.
Mhm.
Just at least one, and many people will be in two and sometimes three, just based on where what area of the organization they're in. But yeah, we always so keeping on track on a weekly, super important and foundational to keep
Yeah,
things
we
moving.
found it actually cuts out a lot of the necessity for the ad hoc meetings or the meetings that just aren't really getting things focused, because you can cover so much in one focused session
Yeah,
if you're teeing things up. And then yeah, if those are, I always hesitate to use the word cascading, but if they're cascading out where each
yeah,
team is also running their weeklies, it's just so much easier than, hey,
yeah,
let's have another, let me interrupt you again, especially
yes,
when you're doing problem solving related to technology. I think that I've seen all the meetings really get in the way. They barely have enough time to context switch into whatever the technical challenge is or the support
yeah,
case is.
yeah.
And then here's the next meeting.
Exactly. Yeah, and and it's all about making those like the most productive time that there is, right? Like
Right.
let's make it where we get the most important work done in this time, 60 to 90-minute time period. And then the rest is just executing. Like we've made our key decisions, all of that. Now we're just going to go out and execute, and then let's regroup next week and see how we did, make progress and all of that. But yeah, we got to in my business, we got to a point where it's like, hey, this is like the most productive time we spend, and we get stuff done here, and the rest of the week is like, yeah, just kind of following up on that, right? Making sure it actually gets executed and walked through. So yeah.
100%. I found it leveled me up as a leader when I first started that cadence, because if something was an issue or a challenge or something didn't go well, you know, young Scott, younger Scott, rookie Scott, if you will, would be like, I'm going to go address this right now. Let's go talk about it. And what that did on the one hand was it for my emotional satisfaction. Okay, I got it off my chest. However, it didn't it didn't always resonate in the right way with the other person, or certainly not in the way I intended, because I often wasn't thinking about my intention. I was just thinking about like must fix problem.
Yeah.
Having that weekly time really helped me start to become more reflective as a leader and be like, okay, what do I really want here? Is it really that, Fred did this thing in a way I don't like? Or do we need to establish standards? Have I been clear about what I communicated? And that pause and reflect almost
Hmm.
immediately allowed me to take more ownership of what was going on. Ownership in a way of, have I been clear? Is this a people problem or is it a process problem? And most often I was surprised at how frequently it was a process problem, not a people problem. Whereas
Yeah.
when I was younger, there's so much literature out there on people and getting the right people in and right people in right seats. And it's so easy to go there. And I'm not
Mhm.
saying that those aren't legit concerns,
Right.
but if that becomes your default, you fail to see, well, how can we improve our process? And where did things get dropped in a way that we're actually building something a lot of people can plug into? I didn't
Yeah.
really expect that to be one of the effects of having that weekly cycle.
Yeah. That's a great point, and something that I think a lot of people miss, frankly, is that process piece, and where it's like, hey, just go get this thing done. Well, while that could be a good thing from time to time, also we tend most people tend to under process, right? There's
Mhm.
not a process out there for most of the time, And that's another, that's another piece that I talk with my clients about a lot, is like creating that culture of process and documentation, and being a champion of that stuff, because that's just yet another thing that's going to allow you to grow if you get it right. And if you get it wrong, you're going to have a lot of pains along the way. So
You find it takes some evolution to get those processes right?
yeah, absolutely. 100%.
I mean, and I know that was sort of a soft lob question, but
Yes.
that's a thing I've seen people really, like, expectations get missed on. Okay, we're going to go document our processes. We've got processes. And what I'll see happen and have seen happen a lot is, well, we had this incredibly beautiful effort that produced these beautiful processes, and so did a great job, or we brought in somebody who did a great job, but they're out of date now. Nobody's looking at them, or they're too, they no longer fit for a variety of reasons. I see a lot of times just people kind of over engineer V1,
Mm-hmm.
then get totally frustrated and drop it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
not come back to it. Do you ever see that?
Yeah. Yeah. It happens all the time. And, and so something that I did, and, it was, what I call it a culture of documentation, or a culture, culture of process, right? Because if you create it and then put it, in some folder somewhere, and nobody ever looks at it until the next time it's like, hey, what happened to that process? Then what good is it, right? So having a living library of processes, number one. Number two, a process champion, like, this is like somebody's job, is to keep up the processes, to review them, to keep a list of the next ones that need to be created, to create them themselves, and as well as like championing that culture inside the organization. What we always said was, you either, at any given time, you either need to be following a process, um, creating a new process, or updating the old process that that is now out of date. And if not saying that worked 100% of the time, or that everybody's sitting there, always like, okay, step one, yeah, but having a culture where that's like promoted and discussed on a regular basis. And hey, did this thing ended up going wrong? Did you follow the process? Yes or no? Okay, we need to follow the process next time. Starts to create that, where it's like, it becomes much more of a living, breathing thing, instead of something that you create once and throw on the
Yeah,
shelf.
I think that is the key. It's got to evolve, just like a product would. Coming
Mhm.
from a product background and software background, you're always improving. It's not even a negotiable. It's just part of the nature of it. It's, as you
Yeah.
said, living, evolving. And it reminds me a lot of one of my new favorite books I just read after everybody recommended it, The Checklist Manifesto
Oh yeah.
by Atul Gawande, and it's quite good. And I thought it was going to be. I probably just got a little turned off by so much hype early on, but it was so aligned with how I like to think and how our teams have run. Like, get your minimum essentials in place. And as you learn, you can build them out. But if the process is so overbearing, right, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
And finding, like, just keep iterating till you find the right thing and stick with it, because ultimately it's going to save everybody time,
Yeah.
trouble, all those things.
100%. It's yeah. So such a good point. And speaking of Atul Gawande, he has another book that, this is like completely unrelated, but it popped into my head. He has another book called Being Mortal, that is fantastic, that I read as a part of my healthcare MBA program. And it's it's about end of life, right? So if you have parents who are aging, or if you
Yeah.
expect to age at some point, it's totally worth the read. It's very important, kind of big picture legacy type thinking, worth checking out. So maybe that'll help somebody.
Yeah,
Try to follow when things pop into my mind, like,
if it's as well written as a checklist manifesto, because I mean
oh,
that's an easy topic to make boring.
mhm.
Shout out to Bernie Smith, who wrote KPI checklists, which was another, I thought, well done book that
Okay.
kind of took that idea and ran with it, just about KPIs. What a perfect segue to another thing I wanted to ask you about. Do you have a set of KPIs that you like to use to gauge where an MSP is, or that you recommend MSPs think about?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, there's some key things, and it's going to be different for everybody, for every MSP at different times, right? So I obviously, I'm thinking about. I mean, right? Yeah. It's like here's the set of data that I need to know exactly how the company is doing at any given time, right? Obviously, you want to look at forward-looking things instead of backward-looking things. And most of the time, it takes several iterations to get something that's actually useful and actionable, right? Because everybody, it's like you want to put, new MRR on there, right? So we want to track our MRR. So what's that number? Um, it's nice to know that, but you kind of already know that. So let's find a leading indicator that's gonna tell us something about what's coming up instead of a backward looking indicator. People want to put CSAT on there, right? So okay, great, it's 98, or 97.6%. Fantastic. What does that
Customer
mean?
satisfaction.
Yeah, yes, sorry, customer, yes, sorry, CSAT, customer
Okay,
satisfaction.
okay.
And so, but what does that mean? And if it fluctuates between 96 and 98%, are we doing anything about it? Does it make any difference, right? So maybe instead of that, we want to track negative customer reviews and or negative customer responses, and that might be helpful because at any time one of those comes in, I'm going to want to go and action on it. So yeah, so there's some set of metrics that's going to be a little bit different every time, but I want to look at forward-looking sales metrics. So how many first-time appointments, how many first-time appointments booked, how many first-time appointments did I actually go on, how many proposals did I make, how many closes of those proposals. Then you want to look at some kind of operational metrics as well. So we're looking at you know something to do with help desk ticketing. That's helpful. It might be some people, sometimes people put total tickets on the board, maybe not as helpful as how many tickets do we have that are over 30 days old, and that's our target for that. We'd like to keep that down to like one or two at the max. We don't want to have a lot of old tickets out there. What's our open to close ratio is probably more helpful than how many tickets we have total. So are we closing as many tickets as we're opening? So we want it to be a negative number ideally, so that we're making progress on our ticket queue instead of adding more to the ticket queue. And then some project type metrics. Usually most people have projects, and so we want to look at maybe project revenue, maybe how much outstanding, what's already been sold that we haven't implemented yet. We've got this backlog of $300,000 that we could bill, but we just haven't done the work yet. So we got to get out there and do the work. So a lot of metrics like that will be helpful, but again, it's so specific to how the business is run, and then really figuring out what's going to be helpful and actionable, as opposed to let's just look at this and this one has been red for the last 6 weeks and we're not doing anything about it. Well, it's not helpful. It's not a helpful metric for our scorecard, right?
Yeah.
At that point.
There's a good thing to have on your checklist for your KPIs. Like, are we going to actually do something about it if it's red?
Yeah.
This raises a point of personal curiosity just from having run, say, revenue operations and support desks organizations before. Do you, in an MSP environment, do you ever have tickets that are, what's the word? They're just not actionable for some reason. Like they need to be qualified. And so what I mean by that is, this is going to be a very specific case, but let's say a Salesforce implementation, for example. So not every MSP may support Salesforce, but this is the one that I'm remembering.
Fair enough.
Somebody says, "Oh, we'd like to automate these 3 things." There's just one person with this idea. We think it'd be cool if we could automate population of XYZ and these other 5 things, because that would make my job easier individually. And then, upon examining it, there were a lot of reasons why that couldn't be done. It was going to make a lot of other people's jobs more difficult.
Yeah.
And so we had to have a metric that we could use to distinguish, or a process maybe is a better way to put it. Like, we're going to move things into just a backlog and a roadmap, and they may live there for a very, very long time. They may,
Right.
and we had to make it clear to everybody, this may never become a priority. In an MSP environment, is there anything like that? Or are you just trying to always like, let's just be responsive? If the customer asks for something, let's see what we can do to go do it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great, yeah. We can do a parallel, right? So, so thinking about that for an MSP, it might be something along the lines of, hey, we're getting, which many MSPs have trouble with this, but hey, we're getting a whole bunch of tickets on this particular issue with antivirus, let's say. And so we've gotten 10 tickets this month about this thing. If we did an automation to handle that, then we could save ourselves 10 tickets next month, right? So a proactive
That's an
MSP,
intelligent one. Yeah, I like that.
yeah. So yes, a proactive MSP is going to always be thinking about those things. And again, depending on how the company is set up, you will generally have some kind of NOC team or a centralized services team, and that type of ticket would go into a separate kind of queue, right? So we've got most MSPs, you'll have a service board for kind of client called in tickets, right? So that would be your help desk. Right. You might have automatically generated tickets. That would be in another spot. And then you might have a service board for sales. You might have a board for client management, et cetera. But then, but then you'd have kind of your network operations center or centralized services. And those would be the people that would be responsible for kind of like creating those automations, right? So like, hey, we see an immediate opportunity to save our help desk 10 hours next month. Let's go ahead and put that as a priority. That kind of a thing. So you'd have, generally a COO or somebody running your centralized services that's going to kind of make those decisions about where are we putting our time for scripting, automations, all those kind of things, and how can we make our help desk more efficient, because that's usually one of the largest expenses is that labor, right? The labor on the help desk, and you want to make that
that's a very good way to frame it, because the question is essentially, it was from the customer support that had that ask on an internal system. So it's a great analogy. And there's so many ways to slice and dice and manage tickets. It's always coming up. Whether it's, whether you're talking about, we deal with product roadmap items, what's strategic versus where's there a bug fix versus where's there a usability fix.
Yeah.
I feel like in the MSP world, you have even more, because there's so many different systems that are often being managed, so many different customer situations that can come up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's huge. But the same with software. It's like, you never get to the end of the roadmap, right? It's like, and a lot of people have 6-9 month, a year long project, your product roadmaps that you're still trying to build out, and there's never enough people, right, to get all the stuff done. So you just gotta plan it out, right? So.
Continually. Well, this has been great. Is there anything specific you'd like to cover before we wrap up?
Nothing else jumps out to I think we covered a lot of really good stuff as far as business operating system, coaching, all of that kind of stuff. So, I think the biggest thing I'd say to kind of wrap up is like, don't be out on an island alone, right? Like get some community, get a peer group, get a coach, something like that, because you got, everybody needs help. So, so don't go it alone, I guess would be my
you look at
big thing.
Great athletes, whether you're great athletes or the CEO of a publicly traded company, you're going to have a coach.
Yeah.
Every high performer I know of has gotten a coach. everyone I run into, and we've worked with so many coaches over the years. We used to do
Yeah.
some white labeling of products with coaches, and
Yeah.
yeah, when somebody gets promoted at the VP level or executive level at virtually any large company, HR is pairing them with a coach to ensure
Yeah.
success.
Yeah. 100%.
And when whether it's military or any other venue, when it's time to figure out how we raise everybody's performance, we invest in our leaders,
Yeah.
coach them,
What we're
and
doing.
investing in the leaders raises everybody, and that allows us in turn to pour into all the people. So absolutely a great message for everyone. And yeah, really appreciate your time and sharing your insights, Brian.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Really, really glad to be here, and thanks for the discussion.